Hi everybody and welcome back to Kevin's Upfront Opinion. So today I thought I'd speak about a comment that somebody sent me in regards to what they believe Rachel Reeves should do about the economy. Now I thought I'd read this because I thought I'd do a video about it after what they said. And what they basically said to me was, unless the government ditches net zero to reduce energy prices, will be in a continuous downward spiral because our industry is uncompetitive at current price levels. We need to vastly reduce benefit payments and the size of the state, because if we continue with current projected spending, we'll bankrupt in the near future, meaning they'll be cut regardless. We also need to attract new investment, and that won't happen with rising taxation and so much uncertainty. In short, we're in a complete mess, and neither the Tories or Labour or any other party have the gumption to get us out of this downward spiral. So I thought I'd address these to take a look at, is he correct? Now, in some respects, he is correct, because net zero, and even if you go back to when Labour introduced the incentives for people installing solar and everything on their roofs, well, I think it was, if I remember rightly, something like 45p per unit. You got paid in the original days, in the heydays of solar. You know, it was easy peasy to sell. I should know because I was involved in the industry at the time. Okay. But what was one of the net problems of that? It pushed energy prices up, because the energy companies just passed on the cost straight to the customer at the end of the day. So in some respects they're correct that we need renewable energies, because we need to find another something instead of just relying on coal and gas and oil, because it's not going to be there forever. Probably not going to run out anytime soon, but it's not going to be there forever. So from a government point of view, they are correct, but we need to find alternatives. But when you take a look at businesses, because this is what it boils down to, the government aren't doing any of this. When you get all these solar fields in, you know, that moron Ed Miliband saying he's got all these deals in place, it's private companies coming in to do it. And what's the first thing that they're going to do? If they, for instance, say, right, we'll pay the government £10 billion for this contract, that £10 billion is going to be knocked onto the customer, which pushes prices up at the end of the day, because they're not going to pay it out of their own pockets or out of their own profits at the end of the day, going to one person and one person alone. And that is why he is correct. So another way needs to be found, either so that you can push prices back down, because they're way too high, especially if you compare our prices to the rest of Europe. I'm not going to go on the benefit bandwagon because I've done so many videos on it recently, and because the fundamental problem is, in this country, it does not pay to work. It's good for your mental health, good for you trying to improve your living style, but it doesn't pay to work. You're always going to be better off, unless you're single, okay, to be on benefits. And I'm sorry to say that. People are going to be heckling me and shouting at me and all that type of stuff, but that is the reality. Now, when it comes to the big one, which is to do with taxation and the UK being competitive on the international market when it comes to business, the reality is, if you believe what the Labour Party say, that they brought in records amount of investment into the country, got no reason to disprove it, to disbelieve it. If they say that's the case, I'll take their word on it. But is the economy doing well? No, it's not. Not when you're having your economy slashed in half in how well it's going to do this year from 2% to 1%. That's not really doing a good job. So the question is, why is the UK not competitive on the international stage? Because I can look at, if I can go back, I've worked in the sales industry since 2005. I've worked in sales, different types of sales. I've worked for companies where I dealt with factories out in the Far East, in Europe, in Asia. And this is a categoric example. I remember 2005, maybe 2006, worked for a packaging company. If I, at the time then, if I sold 5,000 bags, because it was like laminated bags, like you get in the high-end stores and everything, not like these brown ones you go and get from Primark or somewhere like that. Okay, the nice ones. If I sold 5,000 of them out of China, okay, I was selling them at 55p a bag. It would cost me 25p to make them and manufacture them per bag. If I went to Europe, Eastern Europe this is, and we were doing it out of Bulgaria, it was more than double the price per bag. If I did it out of the UK, this is where it gets laughable, you were looking at £3 to £4 a bag. Okay, but the question is why? Why is the UK and America so much more expensive than the rest of the world? Why is it the likes of China and India can do it so dirt cheap? And this is the reality, and this is what people aren't going to be able to accept. Wages. Wages is the problem. If you look at India, why were Primark up until a few years ago making all their clothes in India? Because they got sweatshops. They pay their workers next to no money. Same as in China. I remember the first proper job where I wasn't a trainee or anything. I worked for Texaco. I was on £4 an hour. That's £19.99. Wages, minimum wage now is over £12 an hour. I was 22 at the time. Well, I was 21 at the time. Okay. So if that was today, I'd be on over £12 an hour. Back then, I was on £4 an hour. Was it £4.50? One or the other. Not a great deal of difference in it. That's £8 an hour difference from 25 years ago to today. Now, the question is, what market does the UK go for? Because if you want dirt cheap, a bit like, say, for instance, Shen, you go to India. If you want a decent quality product, you don't go to India for that top quality product. It's no different to the a YouTube video. No, sorry, it wasn't YouTube. It was a Facebook video I saw yesterday. This guy was comparing, because he had a Rolls Royce, which was top of the range Rolls Royce. Don't ask me which one. I'm not that great on cars because I don't drive. Costed over 400,000. An equivalent model out of China, okay, from the front looks quite identical, not quite as big, nowhere near as much power, under $10,000. So that's the question you've got to ask you. What is your market? Because if you work in sales or you're running a business, you've got to know where your market is. And unfortunately, because of the overheads and the costs for businesses in the UK, and this is the same in America and a lot of Western Europe, they can't compete with the likes of China and India and these types of countries who are going to do it dirt cheap. So unless everybody in the UK is willing to drop the minimum wage drastically, it's never going to happen. Now, the other thing you might want to take a look at is taxation. What is the difference in taxation over the last 25 years? So I took a look at it and I thought, oh, it can't be that much of a difference. But there is. There's a massive difference in taxation. So if you look at personal taxation, in 2000, when I pretty much started that job, you know, I started at the end of 99, but we'll start from 2000. Okay. Income tax on your wages was at 10%. Okay. You paid 10% income tax. Okay. You now pay 20% income tax, basically, on your wages. So income tax over the last 25 years has doubled. Okay, and I'm only going to look at income tax and corporation tax because they're the two biggest taxes in the UK that people are paying. But when you look at corporation tax, which is what business owners pay on the profits of their businesses, it's actually come down. And what people might want to remember is the UK pays some of the lowest corporation tax rates in Europe. Don't think it's the lowest, but it's one of the lowest. So back in 2000, okay, corporation tax was at 30% under the Labour Party because we had a Labour government at the time. Okay, we're under Labour now again. Okay, but corporation tax is down at like 25% now. So you can look at it from both sides of the coin and say, when people say, yeah, but taxation is just climbing and climbing all the time. It's not. Yes, income tax has, but corporation tax has come down. And you also might want to remember that the levy that people get before they pay any income tax is way higher because it was only like around about £1,000 to £2,000 25 years ago. It's now around about £12,000 before you pay a penny of income tax. You know, so there are some massive differences when it comes to taxation. You know, but the fundamental thing is it is more expensive for this country nowadays, and you're never going to be able to compete on the international stage, no matter what anybody says about it, because energy costs are going to cripple businesses in this country, and the costs of employment, of employing people to be able to grow businesses. And that is the biggest problem that any business owner up and down this country is going to have. And unless government can get a grip of that, I don't see a way that they're ever going to be able to compete, if it's the case that you want to compete with China and India. So let us know your thoughts on what I've said today. You know, just drop us a comment down below. And obviously, if you are new to the channel, please do subscribe as well. But for now, thanks for watching, and I'll speak to you again a bit later.